Half of the northern United States is about to face one of the season's most significant winter storms. This isn't just another cold snap or a dusting of snow that melts by noon. What's forming right now, as you're watching this, is a weather system so vast and so organised that meteorologists across the country are calling it a multi-state threat. From the mountains of Montana all the way to the coast of New England, millions of people are in the direct path of heavy snow, icy conditions and Arctic cold that could linger for days. Some forecasters are saying they haven't seen a setup quite like this in years. Stay with me for the next several minutes, because we're going to walk through exactly what's happening, where this storm is headed, when it's going to arrive in your area, and most importantly, what you can do right now to make sure you and your family are ready. This isn't about panic, this is about preparation, and by the time we're done, you're going to understand why this storm deserves your attention. Let me paint the picture for you. Right now, a powerful low-pressure system is organising itself in the western United States. It's pulling moisture from the Pacific. It's tapping into a reservoir of bitterly cold air that's been sitting over Canada for weeks. And as it moves east, it's going to sweep across the Rockies, move through the plains, cross the Great Lakes, and eventually reach the northeast. That's thousands of miles. That's dozens of states. That's tens of millions of people who are going to wake up over the next several days to a landscape transformed by snow and ice. Now, if you're watching this from Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, or Maine, you need to pay very close attention. You're in the direct path. But even if you're farther south, even if you're not expecting the heavier snow, this storm is going to affect you. It's going to slow down travel. It's going to disrupt flights. It's going to change plans. And if you have family or friends in the northern states, they're going to need to hear from you. Here's what makes this different from a typical winter storm. It's not just the snow totals, though. Those are going to be significant in some areas. It's not just the cold, though temperatures are going to drop well below freezing and stay there. It's the combination. It's the ice that could coat power lines and tree branches. It's the wind that could turn a snowstorm into a blizzard. It's the timing, hitting midweek when people are trying to get to work, when kids are supposed to be in school, when life is supposed to move forward as normal. And it's the duration. This isn't a quick-moving system that passes through in a few hours. This is a storm that's going to settle in and make itself at home for days. Meteorologists don't use words like significant and major lightly. They've seen thousands of winter storms. They've tracked systems that fizzled out and systems that exceeded expectations. When they start talking about a storm days in advance, when they start issuing warnings and watches across multiple states, when they start comparing it to memorable storms from the past, that tells you something. It tells you this is real. So here's what I want you to do right now. First, I want you to hit that like button so more people can see this information. Second, I want you to subscribe to this channel so you stay updated as this storm develops and as new forecasts come in. And third, I want you to drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from. Are you in Montana? Are you in Minnesota? Are you in Massachusetts? Let me know, because I want to understand who's in the path and who's preparing. We're all in this together, and the more we communicate, the better we can support each other. Now, I know some of you have been through winter storms before. Maybe you remember the blizzards of past decades. Maybe you've lived in snow country your whole life and you've got a garage full of shovels and salt and emergency supplies. That's good. That experience matters. But I also know that some of you are newer to winter weather, or maybe you've been lucky in recent years and haven't faced a major storm. Either way, this video is for everyone, because even if you've seen it all, even if you've weathered the worst winter can throw at you, there's always something new to learn. There's always a detail that could make the difference between being inconvenienced and facing challenges. Over the next several minutes, we're going to break this storm down from every angle. We're going to talk about the science, but in a way that makes sense. We're going to walk through the timeline, region by region, so you know when to expect the worst conditions in your area. We're going to discuss the human side of this, the real-life impacts on families, on communities, on people who are just trying to get through another week, and we're going to give you a clear, actionable plan for how to prepare, what to stock up on, and how to stay safe when the snow starts falling and the roads start freezing. This is information that could protect you, your loved ones, and your neighbours. So let's get started. Let's begin with the basics, because before we can talk about what makes this storm different, we need to understand what it actually is. At its core, this is a winter storm. That means precipitation falling as snow, sleet, or freezing rain, combined with cold temperatures and potentially strong winds. But calling it just a winter storm is like calling a hurricane just some wind and rain. Technically true, but it misses the scale. What we're looking at is a large, organised low-pressure system that's going to move across the northern tier of the United States over the course of several days. A low-pressure system, in simple terms, is an area where the atmosphere is literally pressing down with less force than the surrounding areas. That might sound harmless, but it's not. Low pressure is the engine that drives storms. It pulls air inward from all directions, and that air has to go somewhere, so it rises. When air rises, it cools. When it cools, the moisture inside it condenses into clouds, and eventually precipitation. Add cold temperatures to that equation, and you get snow. Add a lot of moisture and very cold temperatures, and you get heavy snow. Add wind, and you get blowing snow that reduces visibility to near zero. Add freezing rain, and you get ice that coats everything it touches. This particular system is forming in the western United States near the Rocky Mountains. That's a common birthplace for winter storms, because the mountains act like a ramp for air masses, forcing them upward and helping to organise storm systems. From there, it's going to move eastward, following a path that takes it across Montana, into the Dakotas, through Minnesota and Wisconsin, into Michigan, across upstate New York, and finally into New England. That's a journey of more than 2,000 miles, and every mile of that path is going to bring snow and ice to someone. Now, here's where it gets more interesting. This storm isn't just tapping into a little bit of cold air. It's tapping into a deep pool of Arctic air that's been sitting over Canada and the northern United States for weeks. You've probably felt it already if you live anywhere in the northern half of the country. The kind of cold that makes your face hurt when you step outside. The kind of cold that turns your car into a block of ice overnight. That's the air this storm is going to work with. And when a storm system grabs hold of air that cold and starts lifting it, spinning it, organising it, the result is snow. Lots of it. But snow isn't the only concern. In fact, in some areas, snow might not even be the primary concern. As this system moves, it's going to create what meteorologists call a warm layer aloft. That's a thin layer of air a few thousand feet above the ground that's just warm enough to melt snowflakes as they fall. But then, as those melted snowflakes continue falling toward the ground, they pass back through a layer of freezing air near the surface. What happens? They freeze again. That's how you get sleet, those little pellets of ice that bounce when they hit the pavement. Or worse, they stay liquid until they touch something cold, and then they freeze instantly. That's freezing rain. That's ice. Ice is dangerous in a way that snow isn't. Snow you can shovel. Snow you can plow. Snow might slow you down, but ice stops you cold. Ice coats roads and turns them into skating rinks. Ice weighs down power lines until they snap. Ice bends tree branches until they break and fall onto houses, onto cars, onto anything below them. A quarter-inch of ice can make driving nearly impossible. Half an inch can bring down power lines. An inch can cause widespread outages that last for days. And some areas in the path of this storm could see ice accumulations approaching or exceeding those thresholds. Then there's the wind. Winter storms don't always come with strong winds, but this one is likely to. As the low-pressure system deepens, meaning it gets stronger, the difference in pressure between the centre of the storm and the surrounding areas increases. That pressure difference is what creates wind. The bigger the difference, the stronger the wind. And when you combine snow with wind, you get blowing snow. You get whiteout conditions. You get drifts that pile up against buildings and across roads. You get a situation where visibility drops to zero, and you can't tell where the road ends and the ditch begins. Forecasters are also concerned about the duration of this storm. Some winter systems move through quickly. They drop a few inches of snow in a few hours and then they're gone. This one is going to be slower. It's going to take its time. That means prolonged periods of snowfall, potentially lasting a full day or more in some locations. That means snow totals that add up inch by inch, hour by hour, until roads are impassable and emergency crews can't keep up with clearing them. That means people who might try to wait it out, thinking they can just leave a little later, finding themselves trapped at home or stranded on the highway. And we haven't even talked about the cold that comes after the storm. Once the snow stops falling, once the ice has formed, the real Arctic air settles in. Temperatures are going to plunge. We're talking about daytime highs that struggle to get above zero in some areas, overnight lows that drop well into the negative numbers, wind chills that make it feel even colder, cold enough to cause frostbite in minutes. That kind of cold creates serious challenges, especially for people who lose power, who don't have adequate heating, who are elderly or need extra care. So when we talk about this storm, we're not talking about a single threat. We're talking about a combination of threats, each one serious on its own, all of them happening at the same time. Heavy snow that buries cars and collapses roofs, ice that snaps power lines and makes roads impassable, wind that turns snow into blinding whiteouts, and cold that lingers long after the storm has passed, creating challenging conditions for anyone who has to be outside. Meteorologists have been tracking the system for days, running computer models, analysing data, comparing it to past storms, and the more they study it, the more concerned they become. Not because they want to scare people, but because they understand what a storm like this can do. They've seen it before. They know the disruption it causes, they know the danger it poses, and they know that the best defence is preparation. That's why the warnings are going out now, while there's still time. That's why forecasters are urging people in the path to take this seriously. That's why we're making this video. Because knowledge is power. Because understanding the threat is the first step to protecting yourself from it. And because when a storm this large and this powerful is moving across the northern states, everyone deserves to know what's coming. Now, I want to be clear, we're not here to panic you. We're not here to make this sound worse than it is. We're here to give you the facts, to help you understand what's happening, and to guide you through the steps you need to take. Storms like this are serious, but they're also survivable. People have been dealing with winter weather for as long as people have lived in cold climates. The difference today is that we have better forecasts, better warnings, better tools to prepare. We just have to use them. So let's keep going. Let's dig deeper into why this storm is forming in the first place, and what's making it so powerful. You've probably heard the term polar vortex thrown around in the news over the past few years, usually when it gets brutally cold. And maybe you've wondered what it actually means. Is it a storm? Is it a wind pattern? Is it something scientists just made up to explain why winter feels colder than it used to? Let me clear that up for you, because the polar vortex plays a major role in what's happening right now. The polar vortex is a large area of low pressure and cold air that sits over the poles, both the North Pole and the South Pole. Think of it like a spinning pool of frigid air held in place by a strong jet stream that circles around it like a fence. Most of the time, that fence holds. The polar vortex stays where it belongs up in the Arctic and we don't have to worry about it. But sometimes that fence weakens, the jet stream gets wavy, and when it gets wavy, parts of the polar vortex can break off and slide south, bringing Arctic air with them. That's what's been happening over the past few weeks. The polar vortex has been disrupted. The jet stream has buckled and bent, creating a path for cold air to spill down out of Canada and into the United States. If you've been feeling colder than usual lately, that's why. That's not just a typical winter chill. That's air that should be sitting over the Arctic, and instead it's sitting over Minnesota, Wisconsin, Montana, and everywhere in between. Now, cold air by itself doesn't make a storm. You need more than that. You need moisture, you need lift, you need organisation. And that's where the low-pressure system comes in. As this system forms and begins moving east, it's going to act like a vacuum, pulling that cold Arctic air into itself. At the same time, it's pulling moisture from other sources, potentially from the Pacific, potentially from the Gulf of Mexico if the track is right. When you bring cold air and moisture together, you get precipitation, and when the air is cold enough, that precipitation falls as snow. But there's another factor at play here, one that makes this storm more powerful than it might otherwise be. It's called bombogenesis, though you might hear it referred to as a bombogenesis or simply a bomb cyclone. Don't let the dramatic name fool you. It's a real meteorological term, and it describes a process where a storm intensifies very rapidly. Specifically, it means the pressure at the centre of the storm drops by a certain amount within a certain time frame. When that happens, the storm becomes stronger, winds increase, precipitation becomes heavier, and the impacts become more severe. Not every winter storm undergoes bombogenesis, but when one does, it gets the attention of forecasters very quickly. And right now, there are signs that this system could intensify rapidly as it moves across the plains and into the Great Lakes. That would mean heavier snow, stronger winds, and more dangerous conditions overall. It would mean the difference between a manageable snowstorm and a paralyzing blizzard. Let's talk about timing for a moment, because timing matters. We're in mid-February, which is typically one of the coldest times of the year across the northern United States. The ground is frozen solid, lakes and rivers are iced over. The sun is still relatively low in the sky, so even on clear days there's not much warmth. That means when snow falls, it's not going to melt. It's going to stick, it's going to accumulate, and it's going to stay there until temperatures rise, which isn't going to happen anytime soon. Compare that to a storm in early November or late March, when the ground might still have some warmth left in it, when the sun is higher and stronger, when temperatures can swing above freezing during the day. Those storms can drop a lot of snow, but some of it melts as it falls. Some of it melts the next day. The impacts are real, but they're often short-lived. This storm doesn't have that luxury. The cold is already in place. The cold is going to stay in place, and that means every inch of snow that falls is going to stay on the ground, piling up, creating hazards until spring finally arrives or until snowplows can clear it away. There's also the question of moisture. Where is this storm getting its moisture from? That might sound like a technical detail, but it's actually very important. If a storm taps into a very moist air mass, it can produce heavy snow rates, sometimes 2 or 3 inches per hour. That kind of snowfall can overwhelm plows. It can reduce visibility to near zero. It can bury cars in a matter of hours. If the moisture source is weaker, the snow might be lighter, more manageable, less impactful. Right now, forecasters are watching several moisture sources. The Pacific is one, the Gulf of Mexico is another, and depending on the exact track of the storm, it could tap into one, both, or neither. That's one of the uncertainties that makes forecasting winter storms so challenging. Here's another piece of the puzzle. The track of the storm, meaning the path it takes as it moves from west to east, determines who gets what. If the storm tracks farther north, areas along the Canadian border could see the heavier snow, while areas farther south might see more ice or even rain. If it tracks farther south, the opposite could happen. If it tracks right down the middle, everyone in between gets hammered. Right now, the most likely track takes it across the northern plains and into the Great Lakes, which would put the heavier snow across Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, with significant snow extending into New England. But tracks can shift. A shift of just 50 or 100 miles can mean the difference between a foot of snow and a few inches, between a direct hit and a near miss. That's why forecasters are constantly updating their models, constantly refining their predictions. They're not being indecisive. They're not changing their minds for no reason. They're responding to new data, new observations, new information that helps them understand where this storm is going and what it's going to do. And that's why you need to stay updated, not just watch one forecast and assume it's set in stone. Things change, forecasts improve, and the closer we get to the event, the more confident forecasters become about the details. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're driving across the country, from California to New York. A week before you leave, you can say with confidence that you're going to pass through Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and so on. But you can't say exactly what time you'll arrive in each state, or which rest stops you'll use, or whether you'll take the northern route or the southern route through a particular state. As you get closer to your departure date, you can refine those details. The day before, you can plan your route down to the mile. The day of, you know exactly where you are and where you're going. That's how storm forecasting works. The big picture is clear days in advance. The fine details come into focus as the storm gets closer. So here's what you need to understand. This storm is forming because a perfect combination of ingredients is coming together at the same time. Arctic air from a disrupted polar vortex, moisture from the Pacific or the Gulf, a strong jet stream to guide and organize the system, atmospheric lift to turn that moisture into precipitation, and cold temperatures to ensure that precipitation falls as snow and ice. Put all of that together and you get a major winter storm. Scientists have studied storms like this for decades. They understand the physics. They understand the patterns, and they know that when these ingredients align, the results can be significant. That's not fear-mongering. That's not exaggeration. That's just meteorology. That's just the atmosphere doing what it does. And our job is to pay attention, to take the warnings seriously, and to prepare ourselves for what's coming. Now that we understand why this storm is happening, let's talk about where it's going and who's going to feel the worst of it. Every storm has a path, and this one is no exception. But because this storm is so large, because it's going to affect so many states, we need to walk through it region by region, state by state, so you know exactly when to expect impacts in your area. This isn't just about knowing if you're in the path, it's about knowing when to finish your preparations, when to cancel your plans, when to stay off the roads, and when the worst conditions are likely to hit. Let's start in the west, because that's where this storm begins. Montana and Wyoming are going to be among the first to feel the effects. If you live anywhere near the Rockies, anywhere in the mountainous terrain of the northern Rockies, you're already familiar with winter weather. You've seen heavy snow before. But this storm is going to bring significant accumulations, potentially measured in feet rather than inches in the highest elevations. The snow is going to start falling, and it's going to keep falling. Travel across mountain passes is going to become difficult, possibly impossible. Interstate highways that cut through the mountains could close. If you need to travel through this region, You need to do it before the storm arrives, not during it, and certainly not when conditions are at their worst. From Montana and Wyoming, the storm moves east into the Dakotas. North Dakota and South Dakota are no strangers to winter storms either, but this one is going to test even the most experienced residents. The snow is going to be heavy, the winds are going to be strong, and the combination of the two could create blizzard conditions, where visibility drops to near zero and drifts pile up across roads faster than plows can clear them. If you're in the Dakotas, you need to be prepared for the possibility of being stuck at home for a day or more. That means stocking up on food, water, medications, and anything else you might need. It means making sure your heating system is working. It means having backup plans in case the power goes out. As the storm continues east, it moves into Minnesota. Minnesota is going to be right in the heart of this system. The Twin Cities, Duluth, Rochester, everywhere in between, all of it is in the direct path. Snow totals could be significant, potentially reaching double digits in many areas. The snow is going to be heavy and wet in some places, light and powdery in others, depending on temperatures. But either way, it's going to pile up. Roads are going to become difficult or impossible to travel. Schools are likely to close, businesses might shut down, and power outages are a real possibility, especially if ice accumulates on power lines or if heavy snow brings down tree branches. From Minnesota, the storm spreads into Wisconsin, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison. All of these cities are going to see snow. How much depends on the exact track, but forecasters are expecting significant accumulations. The timing matters here, because if the heavier snow falls during the day, during commute hours, the roads are going to be packed with people trying to get home. That's when accidents happen. That's when highways turn into parking lots. If you're in Wisconsin, pay attention to the timing forecasts. If the snow's going to hit during your commute, consider leaving early, or better yet, consider not traveling at all. Michigan is next, and Michigan is going to face a complex situation. The western side of the state near Lake Michigan could see lake effect snow on top of the snow from the storm system itself. Lake effect snow happens when cold air blows across the relatively warmer water of the Great Lakes, picking up moisture and dumping it as snow on the downwind side. That can add several more inches, even a foot or more, to areas that are already expecting heavy snow from the main storm. Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, all of them are going to see impacts, and the Upper Peninsula, which often gets buried in snow during the winter, is going to see even more. Now let's move into New York. We're not talking about New York City here, at least not primarily. We're talking about upstate New York, the areas around Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany. These are areas that know snow. They've seen some of the heaviest snowfalls in the country. But that doesn't mean they're immune to disruption. This storm is going to bring heavy snow to upstate New York, and depending on the track, some areas could see very significant totals. Even Buffalo could see lake effect snow on top of the storm snow, just like Michigan. Syracuse could see prolonged heavy snow that lasts for hours. Albany could see a mix of snow and ice, making travel particularly difficult. If you're in upstate New York, you need to be ready. From New York, the storm moves into New England. Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are going to be the final stops on this storm's journey, and they're going to feel it. These are states where winter is a way of life, where snowstorms are expected and prepared for. But even for New England, this storm is going to be significant. Snow totals could approach or exceed a foot in many areas. The snow is going to be heavy, the kind that's hard to shovel, the kind that weighs down roofs. And because New England is heavily forested, the combination of snow and ice on tree branches could lead to widespread power outages. If you're in Vermont, New Hampshire, or Maine, make sure you're ready for the possibility of losing power, potentially for an extended period. Massachusetts could see snow as well, particularly in the western and central parts of the state. Boston might see less, depending on the exact track, but it's still going to feel the effects through travel disruptions, colder temperatures, and the ripple effects of a major storm hitting the region. Now let's talk about timing, because knowing when the storm hits is just as important as knowing where. In the western states, Montana and Wyoming, the snow is going to start earliest. That could be as soon as the beginning of the week. For the Dakotas and Minnesota, the snow is forecasted to arrive around mid-February, likely during the midweek period of February. That's right in the middle of the work week, which means maximum disruption. For Wisconsin and Michigan, it might be a day later, Wednesday into Thursday, or Thursday into Friday. And for New York and New England, the snow could arrive late in the week, Thursday into Friday, or even stretching into the weekend. These are general timeframes, and they're going to be refined as the storm gets closer. But what they tell you is that you don't have weeks to prepare. You have days. If you live in Montana, you might have less than that. If you live in New England, you have a little more time, but not much. The key is to act now, not later. Don't wait until the day before the storm to go to the grocery store. Don't wait until the snow is already falling to check your emergency supplies. Do it now while you still have time, while the stores are still stocked, while you can move around freely. Here's something else to keep in mind. Just because you're not in the direct path of the heavier snow doesn't mean you're not going to be affected. Storms like this have far-reaching impacts. Airlines cancel flights, not just in the storm zone but across the country, because planes and crews get delayed. Trucks carrying goods get stuck or delayed, which means shipments don't arrive on time. Roads close, which means travel plans get disrupted even if you're trying to drive around the storm rather than through it. Family members and friends who live in the path might need help, might need someone to check on them, might need someone to bring them supplies if they can't get out. This storm affects everyone, directly or indirectly, and let's not forget about the cold that comes with the storm and lingers after it. We're not just talking about snow and ice. We're talking about temperatures that plunge and stay low, wind chills that make it feel even colder, conditions that make it dangerous to be outside for more than a few minutes. If you lose power during the storm, if your heating goes out, that cold becomes a serious concern, especially for the elderly, for young children, and for anyone with health conditions. That's why preparation isn't just about having enough food in the house. It's about having ways to stay warm, having backup heating sources, having layers of clothing, having blankets, having a plan for what you'll do if the power goes out and stays out. Each of these states, each of these regions, has its own challenges, its own vulnerabilities. Montana and Wyoming have mountain passes that close. The Dakotas have wide open spaces where wind can whip snow into blinding whiteouts. Minnesota and Wisconsin have major metropolitan areas where millions of people have to navigate snowy roads and disrupted transit systems. Michigan has the added complication of lake-effect snow. New York has a mix of urban and rural areas, each with different needs. New England has old infrastructure, narrow roads, and forests that can bring down power lines. Every place is different, but every place is going to be affected. So no matter where you are, no matter whether you're in the bullseye or on the edge, you need to take this storm seriously. You need to know when it's coming to your area, you need to know what to expect, and you need to be ready before it arrives, because once the snow starts falling and conditions worsen, preparation becomes much harder. That's why acting now, while you have time, makes such a difference. Let's move on now and talk about what makes this storm stand out from all the others, what makes it more than just another winter weather event. If you've lived in the northern United States for any length of time, you've seen snow, you've seen cold, you've seen winter storms, so you might be wondering, why is this one any different? Why should I pay more attention to this one than I did to the last one, or the one before that? Those are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers. Because this storm is different. Let me explain why. First, it's the combination of factors. Most winter storms bring one or two major threats: heavy snow or high winds or ice or extreme cold. But this storm is bringing all of them at once. Heavy snow across a huge swath of the country, ice in certain areas where temperatures are just right, or just wrong depending on how you look at it, strong winds that are going to create blizzard conditions in some places, and brutal cold that's going to settle in after the storm passes and stay for days. When you stack all of those threats on top of each other, the result is a storm that's more dangerous, more disruptive, and harder to recover from than a storm that brings just one or two of those elements. Second, it's the size. This storm is massive. It's not a small localized system that affects one state or one region. It's a sprawling system that's going to stretch across a dozen states or more. That means the impacts are widespread. That means resources get stretched thin. That means emergency crews, power companies, road crews, everyone who responds to winter storms, they're all going to be dealing with impacts across a huge area. They can't just focus on one city or one county. They have to respond everywhere at once, and that makes recovery slower. It makes help harder to get to the people who need it most. Third, it's the duration. Some storms move fast. They blow in, drop their snow and leave. This one is going to take its time. It's going to settle in and dump snow for hours, potentially for a full day or more in some places. That means snow totals are going to add up. That means roads that get ploughed in the morning are going to be covered again by afternoon. That means visibility is going to be poor for extended periods. That means people who think they can just wait a few hours and then venture out are going to find conditions haven't improved. They've gotten worse. Fourth, it's the timing. This storm is hitting midweek, when people are at work, when kids are in school, when life is in full swing. That's not like a weekend storm where people can stay home, where schools are already closed, where there's no pressure to be anywhere. Midweek storms cause maximum disruption. They force schools to close at the last minute. They force businesses to send people home early. They catch people on the roads during commute times. They create situations where decisions have to be made quickly, under pressure, without the luxury of time to think things through. And that's when mistakes happen. That's when people take risks they shouldn't take. That's when accidents occur. Fifth, it's the ice potential. Snow is one thing, ice is another. As I mentioned earlier, some areas in the path of this storm could see significant ice accumulations. Ice is insidious. It's invisible on the roads until you hit it. It coats everything it touches, adding weight to power lines and tree branches until they snap. It makes walking dangerous, driving nearly impossible, and recovery slow and difficult. A quarter-inch of ice can paralyze a city. Half an inch can cause widespread power outages. An inch can leave people without power for days, even weeks in extreme cases. And because ice is often unpredictable, because the difference between snow and ice can come down to a few degrees of temperature, forecasters have to be very careful when talking about ice potential. But right now, the ingredients are there. The setup is there, and people in certain areas need to be prepared for the possibility of significant icing. Sixth, it's the cold that follows. Once the storm passes, once the snow stops falling, the real Arctic air moves in. Temperatures are going to drop to levels that are dangerous in their own right. We're talking about highs that don't get out of the single digits, lows that plunge well below zero, wind chills that make it feel even colder, cold enough to cause frostbite in minutes. That kind of cold requires serious preparation. Frostbite can develop in minutes. Hypothermia can occur if you're exposed for too long. It can freeze pipes, damage homes, strain heating systems, and create hazards that last long after the snow has stopped. And if you lose power during the storm, if you're stuck in a house without heat while temperatures outside are below zero, that's a serious situation that requires immediate action and help from family or emergency services. Seventh, it's the precedent. Meteorologists have long memories. They remember the big storms, the ones that shut down entire regions, the ones that caused widespread power outages, the ones that led to emergency declarations. And when they look at the setup for this storm, when they run their models and analyze the data, they see similarities to some of those past events. They see the potential for this storm to be talked about for years, to be remembered as one of the significant winter storms of the decade. Now that doesn't mean it's guaranteed to reach that level. Weather is complicated and forecasts can change, but the potential is there, and that potential is what's driving the warnings, the watches, the advisories, the urgency and the voices of forecasters as they talk about this system. Eighth, it's the vulnerability of the infrastructure. Power grids in winter are already strained. Cold temperatures mean people are using more electricity to heat their homes. Add ice and snow and wind on top of that, and you have a recipe for outages. Older power lines, older transformers, older equipment, all of it is vulnerable when a storm like this hits. And once the power goes out, it's not always a quick fix. Crews have to find the problem, access it, which might be difficult if roads are blocked by snow or downed trees, and repair it, which takes time. In some cases, power can be restored in hours. In other cases, it can take days. And for people who lose power during a winter storm, every hour without electricity is more cold and more challenges. Let me also talk about the human element. People are tired of winter by mid-February. They're tired of the cold, tired of the snow, tired of scraping ice off their windshields and bundling up every time they go outside. When another storm comes along, there's a temptation to downplay it, to assume it's not going to be as bad as forecasters say, to convince yourself that you've seen worse and you'll be fine. That's a dangerous mindset. Because even if you've seen worse, even if you've lived through blizzards and ice storms and sub-zero cold, every storm is different. Every storm brings new challenges. And underestimating a storm, deciding you don't need to prepare, deciding you can ignore the warnings, that's how difficult situations develop. That's why being prepared and following forecasts matters so much. So what makes this storm different? It's the size, the duration, the combination of threats, the timing, the ice potential, the brutal cold that follows, the precedent of past similar storms, the vulnerability of infrastructure, and the human tendency to underestimate what's coming. Put all of that together, and you have a storm that deserves your full attention. You have a storm that requires preparation, caution, and respect. Forecasters don't issue warnings lightly. They don't use words like major and significant unless they mean it. When they tell you a storm is coming, when they tell you to prepare, it's because they've looked at the data, they've run the models, they've used their experience and expertise to assess the threat, and they're telling you this storm is real, it's serious, and it's coming. Now that we understand what makes this storm stand out, let's shift our focus to the human side of it, to the real-life impacts this storm is going to have on families, on communities, on the people who are in its path. Let's step away from the meteorology for a moment and talk about what this storm actually means for people. Because numbers and forecasts and models are important, but they're abstract. What matters in the end is how this storm affects your life, your family, your neighbours, your community. Let's walk through some real-life scenarios, the kind of situations people are going to face over the next several days. Imagine you're a grandparent living alone in a small town in Minnesota. Your kids live a few hours away. You've got a comfortable house, a furnace that works, and enough food in the pantry to last a week. But you also rely on your car to get to the grocery store, to get to doctor's appointments, to stay connected to the world beyond your front door. When this storm hits, when the snow starts piling up and the roads become impassable, you're going to be stuck at home. Maybe for a day, maybe for 2 or 3, depending on how quickly the plows can get to your street. That's not the end of the world if you're prepared, but if you're running low on medications, if you need to pick up a prescription that's waiting at the pharmacy, if something in your house breaks and you need help, being stuck becomes a problem. That's why it's so important to check on elderly neighbours, on relatives who live alone, on anyone who might need help before the storm arrives. A simple phone call, a quick visit, making sure they have what they need, that can make all the difference. Now imagine you're a parent with 2 kids in school and a job that requires you to be there in person. You can't work from home. When you hear there's a storm coming, you start making plans. Do you keep the kids home from school? Do you call in to work? Do you wait to see what the school district decides? These are real decisions that parents have to make, often with incomplete information, often at the last minute, and if you make the wrong call. If you send the kids to school and then the storm hits harder than expected and the buses can't run and the schools close early, now you're scrambling to pick them up, to get home safely, to make sure everyone is together before conditions get really bad. That's stressful. That's the kind of situation that keeps parents up at night. And it's why schools and businesses need to make decisions early, need to communicate clearly, need to give people time to plan. Think about the people who work in healthcare, in emergency services, in jobs that don't stop just because there's a storm, nurses who have to get to the hospital for their shift, police officers who have to patrol the roads, utility workers who have to respond when power lines go down, snowplow drivers who work through the night to keep roads clear. These people don't have the option to stay home. They have to go out into the storm, into dangerous conditions because their jobs are essential, and they do it knowing the risks, knowing that the roads are treacherous, knowing that visibility is poor because they're committed to helping others. But they're also human. They're also vulnerable, and they need the rest of us to make their jobs easier by staying off the roads when we don't have to be out there, by being prepared so we don't need to call for help, by respecting the danger and not taking unnecessary risks. Consider the small business owner who runs a shop in a downtown area. When a storm like this hits, when the streets are empty and the snow is piling up, there are no customers, there's no revenue, but the bills don't stop. The rent is still due. The utilities still have to be paid. For small businesses, especially those that operate on thin margins, a few days of lost sales can be devastating. And it's not just the immediate impact, it's the ripple effect. It's the customers who don't come back right away after the storm. It's the disruption to supply chains that means inventory doesn't arrive when it's supposed to. It's the stress of wondering if you're going to be able to keep the doors open. Big storms affect big businesses too, but they have resources, reserves, the ability to absorb a few bad days. Small businesses don't always have that cushion. And that's another layer of the human impact, one that doesn't always make the headlines but is deeply felt in communities across the storm's path. Let's talk about pets. If you have a dog, a cat, or any other animal that depends on you, they're going to be affected by this storm too. Dogs still need to go outside even when it's freezing cold and the snow is deep. Cats might be content indoors, but what if the power goes out and the house gets cold? What if you run out of pet food because you couldn't get to the store? Animals are part of the family and they need to be part of the preparation plan. That means making sure you have enough food and water for them. That means thinking about where they'll be safe and warm if something goes wrong. That means not leaving them outside when the wind chills are life-threatening. People who love their pets know this instinctively. But it's worth saying out loud because in the rush to prepare for a storm, sometimes the four-legged members of the family get overlooked. Here's another scenario. You're planning to travel. Maybe you have a flight scheduled midweek to visit family, to go on vacation, to attend a business meeting. You've been looking forward to it. You've made plans. And now there's a storm coming, right when you're supposed to leave. Do you cancel? Do you try to leave earlier? Do you hope the flight doesn't get cancelled? Airports across the northern United States are going to see delays and cancellations. Airlines are going to be scrambling to reroute planes and crews. And travellers are going to be stuck, either at home unable to get to the airport, or at the airport unable to get on a plane, or in some other city waiting for a connection that isn't coming. Travel during winter storms is always a gamble, and this storm is going to disrupt travel in a big way. The advice is simple. If you can change your plans, do it. If you can delay your trip, do it. If you absolutely have to travel, build in extra time, expect delays, and be prepared for the possibility that you might not get where you're going when you plan to get there. Now let's talk about power outages, because this is one of the most serious impacts a winter storm can have. Losing power in the summer is uncomfortable. Losing power in the winter can be challenging. When the temperature outside is below zero and your furnace stops working, your house starts getting cold fast. Within a few hours it can drop below 50 degrees. Within a day it can be close to freezing inside. If you have young children, elderly family members, or anyone with health conditions, that's a serious situation that needs attention. You need to have a plan. Do you have a fireplace or a wood stove? Do you have a generator? Do you have extra blankets, warm clothing, sleeping bags? Do you know where you'll go if you can't stay in your house? Maybe you have a neighbour with power, or a friend across town, or a community shelter that opens during emergencies. The key is to think about this before it happens, not after. Because once the power is out, once the house is cold, your options become limited very quickly. Let's also talk about isolation. Winter storms can cut people off, not just physically but emotionally. If you're stuck at home for days, if the roads are closed and you can't see friends or family, if the power is out and you can't charge your phone or get online, that isolation can be challenging. Staying connected with friends and family by phone helps. And for people who already struggle with depression or mental health challenges, the isolation of a winter storm can be particularly difficult. That's why staying connected matters. Check on people by phone, send text messages, let people know you're thinking about them. And if you're the one who's feeling isolated, reach out, call a friend, talk to a neighbour, even if it's just a brief conversation through the door or across the yard. We're social creatures. We need connection. And storms like this remind us of that. Here's one more scenario, and it's an important one. You're at work when the storm hits. The snow starts falling faster than expected. Your boss says everyone can leave early. But by the time you get in your car, the roads are already bad. Traffic is heavy because everyone is trying to get home at the same time. Visibility is dropping. The car in front of you slides off the road. You're crawling along at 20 miles an hour and you're still not sure you're going to make it home safely. This is the situation that causes the most accidents, the most injuries, the most accidents and difficulties during winter storms. People getting caught on the roads when they shouldn't be there. And it's avoidable. If you know a storm is coming, if forecasters are saying heavy snow is going to start during the afternoon, don't wait until it starts to leave. Leave early. Leave before the snow begins. Or better yet, don't go in at all if you can avoid it. Work from home if your job allows it. Take a day off. When weather conditions are poor, working from home or rescheduling is often the safer choice, and employers need to understand that too. They need to give people flexibility. They need to make decisions that prioritize safety over productivity. All of these scenarios are real. They're going to happen to people across the northern United States over the next several days. Some of them are going to be minor inconveniences, others are going to be serious challenges, and a few unfortunately are going to be life-threatening situations. But the common thread is that they're all manageable. If people are prepared, if people take the warning seriously, if people make smart decisions and look out for each other, that's the human side of this storm. It's not just about snow totals and temperatures, it's about people trying to navigate their lives, trying to keep their families safe, trying to help their neighbours, trying to get through a difficult few days and come out the other side intact. And that's what we're going to talk about next. How to prepare, what to do, and how to make sure you're ready for whatever this storm brings. Preparation is everything when it comes to a storm like this. The difference between being uncomfortable for a few days and being in genuine danger often comes down to what you do before the snow starts falling. So let's walk through a comprehensive preparation plan step by step, covering everything you need to think about, everything you need to do, and how to prioritize when time is short. Start with the basics: food and water. You want to have enough non-perishable food in your house to last at least 3 days, ideally a week. That doesn't mean you need to buy a bunker's worth of supplies. It just means having things on hand that don't require cooking, or that can be prepared easily. Canned goods, peanut butter, bread, crackers, granola bars, dried fruit, nuts. Things that won't spoil if the power goes out. Things that don't need refrigeration. If you have a gas stove, you can still cook even if the electricity's out. If you have an electric stove and you lose power, you need to have food that doesn't require cooking. Water is usually not a problem during winter storms unless you're on a well and you lose power, which means your pump stops working. If that's your situation, fill up some containers with water before the storm hits. You don't need to go overboard, but having a few gallons set aside gives you peace of mind. Next, medications. This is critical, especially for anyone who relies on prescription medications to manage chronic conditions. If you're due for a refill in the next few days, get it now. Don't wait. Call your pharmacy, explain that a storm is coming, and ask if they can fill your prescription early. Most pharmacies will work with you, especially when there's a weather emergency on the horizon. If you take medications that need to be kept cold, like insulin, and you lose power, you need to have a plan. Some medications can be kept cold using ice packs or by storing them in a cooler. Others are more temperature sensitive. Know what your medications require and have a backup plan in case the power goes out for an extended period. Heating is the next big concern. If your primary heat source is a furnace that runs on electricity or natural gas, what happens if the power goes out? Natural gas furnaces usually have electronic igniters or blowers that require electricity to operate. If the power is out, the furnace won't run, even if you have gas. That's why backup heating is important. If you have a fireplace or a wood stove, make sure you have firewood ready. Make sure the chimney is clear, the flue works, and you know how to use it safely. Never burn anything other than wood in a fireplace. Never use a charcoal grill or a camp stove indoors because they produce carbon monoxide, which is extremely harmful. If you have a generator, make sure it's in working order, make sure you have fuel for it, and make sure you know how to use it safely. Generators produce carbon monoxide too, so they have to be used outside, away from windows and doors. Never run a generator in a garage, even with the door open. The fumes can seep into your house and cause carbon monoxide exposure. If you don't have a backup heat source, you need to have other ways to stay warm. Layers of clothing, thermal underwear, sweaters, heavy socks, hats, gloves. The more layers you have, the better. Blankets, sleeping bags, anything that can trap body heat. Close off rooms you're not using to conserve heat in the parts of the house where you're spending time. Hang blankets over doorways to create barriers. Stay in one room together as a family if possible. Body heat from multiple people can make a real difference in a small space. Lighting is another consideration. If the power goes out, you need flashlights, not candles. Candles are a fire hazard, especially when you're dealing with a lot of other stresses. Flashlights are safer. Make sure you have fresh batteries, or better yet, have a hand crank flashlight that doesn't require batteries at all. If you do use candles, never leave them unattended, keep them away from anything flammable, and make sure you have smoke detectors that are working. Your car needs attention too. If you have to drive before or during the storm, your car needs to be ready. Make sure your gas tank is full. A full tank gives you more weight over the drive wheels, which can help with traction, and it ensures you won't run out of gas if you get stuck. Make sure your windshield washer fluid is topped off with winter-grade fluid that won't freeze. Check your tyres. If you have winter tyres, make sure they're on. If you don't, make sure your all-season tyres have good tread. Bald tyres on snow and ice are dangerous. Keep an emergency kit in your car: blankets, extra clothing, a flashlight, a small shovel, an ice scraper, some snacks, bottled water. If you get stuck, if your car breaks down, if you slide off the road, that kit could help keep you safe and comfortable. But here's the most important piece of advice about your car. Don't drive if you don't have to, seriously. The best way to avoid an accident during a winter storm is to not be on the road in the first place. If the forecast says heavy snow and dangerous conditions, stay home. Cancel your plans. Reschedule your appointments. Nothing is worth risking your life for. And if you absolutely must drive, drive slowly. Leave extra space between you and the car in front of you. Avoid sudden movements, and turn around if conditions become too dangerous. It's not worth it. When conditions are poor, it's best to stay home when possible. Communication is something people often overlook. Make sure your cell phone is fully charged before the storm. If you lose power, your ability to charge your phone is gone unless you have a car charger or a portable battery pack. A portable battery pack is a smart investment. They're not expensive, and they can keep your phone alive for days. Your phone is your lifeline during an emergency. It's how you call for help, how you stay updated on the storm, how you communicate with family and friends. Keep it charged, keep it with you, and if the power goes out, use it sparingly. Turn off apps you're not using. Lower the screen brightness. Preserve the battery as much as possible. Have a plan for staying informed. If the power goes out, you can't rely on the TV. You need a battery-powered radio or a hand-crank radio that can pick up local news and weather updates. NOAA weather radio is the best source for official warnings and forecasts. If you don't have one, consider getting one. They're inexpensive and they can help keep you safe and informed. Your phone can also keep you informed, but again, you need to preserve the battery. Think about your household members who might need special care. Infants, elderly relatives, people with disabilities, people with medical conditions. What do they need? What adjustments do you have to make? Babies need formula, diapers, wipes. Elderly people might need help staying warm, help moving around if the power is out and the house is dark. People with mobility challenges might need extra time to evacuate if something goes wrong. Think through these scenarios. Have plans. Communicate with everyone in your household so everyone knows what to do. Don't forget about your neighbours. If you know someone who lives alone, someone who might need help, check on them. Knock on their door. Make a phone call. Ask if they need anything. Offer to pick up groceries for them if they can't get out. Offer to shovel their walkway after the storm. Offer to let them stay with you if they lose power and can't stay warm. Community matters during storms like this. We take care of each other. That's how we get through. Let me also talk about what not to do. Don't ignore the warnings. Don't assume it's not going to be as bad as forecasters say. Don't wait until the last minute to prepare. Don't go out into the storm unless it's absolutely necessary. Don't use outdoor cooking equipment inside. Don't leave candles burning unattended. Don't drive if you don't have to. Don't let your gas tank run low. Don't assume the power company is going to restore your power within hours. Plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's the mindset you need. Preparation takes time, but it doesn't take a lot of time. A few hours, maybe a full day if you're being thorough, and you can have everything you need. The key is to start now. Not tomorrow, not the day before the storm, now. Because once the snow starts falling, once the roads get bad, your options become more limited. Stores might close and roads might become difficult to travel. Having supplies on hand helps you stay comfortable. Being prepared doesn't just protect you, it protects your family. It protects your neighbours because you're not going to need to call for help. You're not going to tie up emergency resources that might be needed elsewhere. It gives you control in a situation where so much is beyond your control. You can't stop the storm, you can't make it less severe, but you can decide how ready you are for it. And that decision could make all the difference. Now let's talk about timing, about what to expect and when, so you can plan your next several days with as much certainty as possible. Understanding the timeline of a storm like this is crucial because it allows you to plan. It lets you know when to finish your preparations, when to expect the worst conditions, when it's safe to venture out again, and when life can start returning to normal. Let's walk through the general timeline, keeping in mind that specific timing will vary depending on where you are. For those in the western states, particularly Montana and Wyoming, the storm is going to arrive first. Snow could start falling around February 12th to 15th. According to long-range forecasts. It might start light, just flurries, the kind of snow that doesn't seem like much. But don't be fooled, that's the leading edge. Within hours the snow is going to pick up, it's going to become steady then heavy, and once it starts it's going to continue for a long time. By midweek, the mountains could be buried under feet of snow. Travel across mountain passes is going to become dangerous or impossible. If you need to drive through this region, you need to do it before the snow starts, not during it. For the Dakotas and Minnesota, the timeline shifts slightly later. The snow is likely to begin late on one day and continue through the next. That might mean starting late Tuesday night and lasting through Wednesday, or starting Wednesday and lasting into Thursday. The exact timing is going to be refined as the storm gets closer, but the important thing to know is that the heavier snow is going to fall during a relatively short window. That window might be 12 hours, it might be 24 hours, but during that time, snow rates could be intense. We're talking about an inch or two per hour in some places. That kind of snowfall rate means roads become impassable very quickly. Plows can't keep up. Visibility drops to near zero. If you're in the Dakotas or Minnesota, you need to be home, safe, off the roads before that window opens. Wisconsin and Michigan are next in line. For these states, the heaviest snow is likely to arrive midweek or slightly later, depending on how fast the storm moves. Wednesday night into Thursday or Thursday into Friday are the most likely timeframes. Again, these will be refined, but the pattern is the same. The snow is going to start, it's going to intensify, and it's going to last for many hours. In Michigan, particularly along the western side of the state near Lake Michigan, lake effect snow could continue even after the main storm moves on. That means snow could linger into the weekend in some areas, adding even more accumulation on top of what the storm already dropped. For New York and New England, the storm is forecasted to arrive around February 14th to 16th, based on current long-range models. That gives residents of these states a little more time to prepare. But it also means the storm is going to disrupt the end of the work week and potentially the weekend. If you have plans for Friday night for Saturday, think about whether those plans are realistic. Think about whether roads are going to be clear. Think about whether businesses are going to be open. The answer in many cases is going to be no. Now let's talk about the progression of the storm itself from start to finish. The storm begins with clouds. Skies that have been clear or partly cloudy are going to become overcast. Temperatures might even rise slightly at first, as warmer air associated with the storm pushes in. That warmer air is part of what brings the moisture. But don't be lulled into thinking this is going to be a mild system. The cold is coming. It's just waiting its turn. The precipitation starts, often light at first. It might be snow, it might be a mix of rain and snow, depending on temperatures. In some areas it might start as rain, and then transition to snow as colder air wraps in. In other areas, particularly farther north, it's going to be snow from the start. As the storm intensifies, the precipitation becomes heavier. Snow rates increase, visibility decreases, winds pick up. This is when conditions go from merely unpleasant to dangerous. During the peak of the storm, which could last anywhere from several hours to more than a day depending on location, travel becomes nearly impossible. Roads are covered faster than plows can clear them. Accidents pile up. Emergency services become overwhelmed. This is the period when the best advice is simple. Stay inside. Don't try to drive. Don't try to go anywhere. Just stay home, stay warm, and wait it out. After the peak, the snow begins to taper off. It might end abruptly, or it might gradually decrease over several hours. But even as the snow is ending, the danger isn't over. The roads are still buried. The plows are still working, and the cold is settling in. This is when temperatures drop sharply, wind chills plunge, and the snow that fell during the storm freezes solid, becoming packed and icy and difficult to remove. The day after the storm is when recovery begins. Plows work through the day and night to clear main roads first, then secondary roads, then residential streets. That process takes time. It might be a day before your street gets plowed. It might be 2 days. And even after the plows come through, the roads are still going to be slippery, still going to be hazardous. Driving the day after a major storm requires caution, and patience, and a willingness to turn around if conditions are worse than you expected. Power restoration, if there are outages, follows a similar pattern. Utility crews work around the clock to restore power, but they prioritize critical infrastructure first. Hospitals, emergency services, water treatment plants. Then they work on lines that serve the most people. Then they work on smaller outages. If you lose power, you might get it back in a few hours. Or you might be without power for a day, 2 days, even longer in extreme cases. That's why having a plan for staying warm and staying safe without power is so important. The cold lingers for days after the storm. This is the part people sometimes forget about. The storm ends, the snow stops, and you might think things are getting back to normal, but the temperatures stay brutally low. The wind chills stay dangerous, and that cold creates ongoing hazards. Pipes can freeze and burst, cars struggle to start, heating systems are strained, frostbite and hypothermia remain threats for anyone who has to be outside. This phase of the storm, the cold aftermath, can last for a week or more. It doesn't get the same attention as the snow itself, but it's just as serious. Forecast confidence is something we should talk about too. Meteorologists are very confident about the big picture. A major winter storm is going to affect the northern United States. That's not in question. But the details, the exact track, the precise timing, the specific snow totals for each city, those are harder to pin down days in advance. As the storm gets closer, as new data comes in, the forecasts will improve. They'll become more specific. they'll become more accurate. That's why it's important to stay updated. Check the forecast multiple times a day as the storm approaches. Sign up for weather alerts on your phone. Listen to local news. The forecast you see today might change tomorrow. That doesn't mean the forecasters were wrong. It means they're refining their predictions as they learn more. Sometimes the storm track shifts north or south by 50 miles, and that shift can mean the difference between 8 inches of snow and 18 inches. Sometimes the temperature profile changes, and an area that was expecting all snow ends up with ice. Sometimes the storm intensifies more than expected, or less than expected, and the impacts change accordingly. These are the uncertainties of forecasting. They're frustrating, but they're also unavoidable. The atmosphere is complex. It doesn't follow a script, and the best forecasters can do is give you the most likely scenario, along with a range of possibilities, and then update that scenario as new information comes in. What you should take from this timeline is not the exact hour that snow will start in your city, because that's going to change. What you should take is the general flow. Snow starts, conditions deteriorate, the storm peaks, the snow ends, the cold settles in, recovery begins. That pattern is going to hold true regardless of the specific timing, and knowing that pattern allows you to plan. It allows you to know when to be ready, when to stay inside, when to start thinking about venturing out again. So keep checking the forecast, stay informed, adjust your plans as needed. And don't assume that just because the forecast says snow starts tomorrow afternoon, you can wait until tomorrow morning to prepare. Prepare now, because forecasts change, and you want to be ready no matter what happens. Let's move toward the close now, wrapping up with a final reminder of why preparation matters and what we all need to do to get through this together. We've covered a lot of ground in the last several minutes. We've talked about what this storm is, why it's forming, where it's going, who's going to be affected, when it's going to arrive, what makes it different, how it's going to impact people's lives, how to prepare, and what the timeline looks like. That's a lot of information, but all of it boils down to a few simple ideas. This storm is real, it's serious, and you need to be ready. I want to take a moment to talk about something that doesn't always get mentioned in storm coverage, and that's resilience. People who live in the northern United States are no strangers to winter. You've dealt with cold before. You've dealt with snow before. You've dealt with storms that shut everything down for days, and you've gotten through them. You've shoveled your driveways, checked on your neighbours, shared supplies, helped each other out. That's what communities do. That's what gets us through the hard times. This storm is going to test that resilience. It's going to test your patience, your preparedness, your ability to adapt. It's going to disrupt your plans, slow down your life, and force you to deal with uncomfortable, sometimes dangerous conditions. But it's also going to remind you of what matters. It's going to remind you that we're stronger when we work together, when we look out for each other, when we prioritize safety over convenience. So as you prepare for this storm, I want you to think not just about yourself, but about the people around you. Think about the elderly woman who lives next door who might not be able to shovel her walkway. Think about the young family down the street who might be new to the area and don't know what to expect. Think about the person who works at the grocery store who's going to have to deal with crowds and stress and long hours because everyone is stocking up at the same time. Think about the snowplow drivers, the utility workers, the emergency responders, all the people who are going to be out in the storm, in the cold, in the danger, because their jobs require it. Those people deserve our gratitude, our patience, and our cooperation. If you see someone who needs help, help them. If you have extra supplies, share them. If you have a warm place to stay and your neighbour doesn't, offer it. If you're physically able to shovel snow and your neighbour isn't, do it for them. These small acts of kindness don't just make life easier for the person receiving them. They make the whole community stronger. They remind us that we're not isolated individuals struggling alone. We're part of something larger, something that functions best when we support each other. I also want to talk about hope, because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by a forecast like this. It's easy to hear about heavy snow and ice and brutal cold and power outages and think, how am I going to get through this? But you are going to get through this. Storms pass, weather conditions improve, the snow stops falling, the roads get ploughed, the power comes back on, temperatures rise, life returns to normal. It might take a few days, it might take a week, but it happens. And when it does, you're going to look back and realize you were stronger than you thought, more capable than you gave yourself credit for. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take this storm seriously. You absolutely should. But it also means you shouldn't panic. Panic doesn't help. Preparation helps. Clear thinking helps. Community helps. And hope helps. Hope that the worst predictions don't come true. Hope that your preparations are enough. Hope that your power stays on. Hope that your neighbours are safe. I hope that when the storm is over, everyone can say they made it through together. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you one more time to stay updated. Forecasts are going to change, new information is going to come in, and you need to be aware of those changes. Follow local news, check the National Weather Service website, sign up for alerts on your phone, listen to NOAA Weather Radio. The more informed you are, the better decisions you can make. And good decisions, made with good information, are what keep people safe during storms like this. I also want to encourage you to share this video. If you found this information helpful, chances are someone else will too. Share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your neighbours, share it with anyone you know who's in the path of this storm. The more people who are informed, the more people who are prepared, the safer everyone is going to be. And speaking of sharing, I want to hear from you. I want to know where you're watching from. I want to know if you're in the path of the storm. I want to know what you're doing to prepare. Drop a comment down below and let me know. Are you in Montana, stocking up on firewood? Are you in Minnesota, planning to stay home from work? Are you in New England, checking your emergency supplies? Tell me your story. Let's build a community here, not just of people watching a video, but of people supporting each other, sharing information, staying connected. That's what this is all about. If you haven't already, hit that like button. It helps more people see this video. It helps get this information out to the people who need it. And subscribe to this channel so you don't miss updates. As this storm develops, as new forecasts come in, I'll be here to break it down for you, to give you the information you need, to help you stay safe. We're in this together. Let me leave you with this. Winter storms are part of life in the northern United States. They're not new, they're not unprecedented, but every storm is unique. Every storm brings its own challenges, and this storm, with its size, its power, its combination of threats, is one that deserves your full attention. Take it seriously. Prepare thoroughly. Stay informed. Look out for each other. And when the storm passes, when the snow melts, when life returns to normal, you'll be able to look back and know that you did everything you could to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. Stay safe. Stay warm. And I'll see you in the next update.